So the question for today came from a listener that wants to remain anonymous, but I'm going to read the question and we'll go from there. I have been working with processing my past for 9 months, in addition to other strategies, and I am getting near the end of my list of things I wanted to work through. How did you know you were finished with the past, and where did your healing journey go from there? Did you notice any acceleration in your healing after you finished working with the past? I am Jen Johnson. This is Thought by Thought Healing. I talk about everything related to the mind-body connection, mind-body syndrome, and reversing chronic symptoms from a Christian perspective. And that will definitely be part of this episode because I cannot answer these questions without talking about my personal story of God and his redemptive work in my emotional life. But before we dive into my answers, I want to take a second to just slow down. Take a breath. Reduce the stakes. Reduce the speed. Let yourself go at a more relaxed pace. And remind yourself that it is okay to do that. For me, reducing that pressure was a pretty important part of my healing. We all have different triggers, so maybe that's helpful for you, and maybe it's just not a part of your story. But either way, slowing down and enjoying peace is an important part of life. Okay, so dividing her question into 3 parts. How did you know you were finished with the past? Where did your healing journey go from there? And third is, did you notice any acceleration in your healing after you finished working with the past? Okay, so first one, how did you know you were finished working with the past? I was working on the past, current stressors, and personality traits that were ridden in fear that I had no idea were ridden in fear at the same time. And so maybe that's what you mean by past, working with the past, but I bundle them all together. I view it like a rubber band ball that was rolled around the floor a lot and has cat hair, dirt, leftover food, all this stuff in it. And I had to take that out of my brain and start figuring out what was going on in there. And so as I worked on that, I did not find a symptom reduction right up front. But because there's so much, right? But I was able to identify where those things were showing up in my body. So I in my emotional work, I would pay attention to, as I worked on things, where that would show up in me, in my torso area, where was I feeling those things. So I started to create that mind-body connection and being more aware of how these things were playing out in me. So I began to know that I was close to being finished as I started to feel the effects of healing emotionally. I did not do my emotional work in order to get an end product of healing in my body. I want to be clear about that. I think that's something that people do, is they put that pressure on themselves to do the work in order to heal. And unfortunately, that pressure is not helpful for those of us who are self-pressuring people. It does not help us. And it also is using yourself to get a product of feeling better. And so I suggest paying attention to where it shows up in your body, but letting that process have outcome independence and really just do it for the sake of healing and learning what the Lord has for freedom for you in this journey that you are on. And it is definitely a journey. And actually, I think I want to switch around and do the third one first. Did you notice any acceleration in your healing after you finished working with the past? Yes, I did. And here's the vision I want to give you. Our brains have different parts. There's a prefrontal cortex, and that's our thinking, reasoning, executive, decision-making part of our brain. It's reasonable and logical, likes to think through things. And then we've got the emotional part of our brain, and it, when we're in chronic pain, is very highly activated and carrying a lot. So if you think of it like a scale, the emotional part of your brain is weighted down with all this stuff in it. I mean, it is very full and challenged. And we are using this emotional work to get in there and understand what is happening with all this weighty stuff. And as you can see in this analogy with this highly heavy scale on the limbic system end of things, we need some relief. We need some release. We need some forgiveness. We need some lightness. We need some letting go. We need some moving on, some redeeming, some reframing, some renaming, some retelling of our story. So as I began to do that, I began to feel more balanced, and homeostasis is what they call it, the ability to think clearly and the ability to make decisions and recognize choice when you have it, and choose an emotional state over a different emotional state. And those kinds of things come about as we start to tip that scale back and have that balance between our whys and between our logical reasoning prefrontal cortex and our limbic system. And so that hopefully is an image. And the reason that I bring an image that will help you, and the reason that I bring that up, is because if we're doing emotional work and there is none of that releasing and forgiving and compassion and understanding happening, then it is worth revisiting what you're doing for emotional work. Again, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know how you're doing it, but we do want it to be a space that is one that's bringing freedom for you, even if that freedom sometimes is simply to feel what you feel, and that it is okay to be there. The Bible is clear. There is a time. There is a time for a lot of different emotions, and sometimes going and doing that emotional work meant the Lord saying, it is okay to feel this thing for a little while. It is grieving. And then sometimes he would say, like, yeah, that language is not helpful. Let's replace that with this uplifting, building up language, and leading towards freedom in one way or another from him. So if you're not finding any relief in symptoms while you are 9 months in, then it might be worth reconsidering and asking somebody how they did their emotional work, or working with somebody to understand what that could potentially mean in a shift for you. Okay, so then going back to question number 2, where did your healing journey go from there? Practice. All those things that he had taught me, to forgive and to replace it with compassion, and to redeem the language, and to change the story that I told about my life into one that I learned a lot and changed and grew more into who God wanted me to be. As I practiced the things that he taught me, that was where my journey went. And I still do that. And I hope that I do that for the rest of my life, because I think that is a healing and healed lifestyle, is to be in a place where I will go to the Lord with those current stressors, and maybe other past subconscious stressors will come up. And so I'll be doing maintenance and working on those things. I also did things like graded exposure. Well, actually, by that time I was living life fully. So I don't think graded exposure in relationship to my body and using my body was part of that. But just embracing an abundant life, continuing to interrupt fear in other places of my life, not just movement in my body. I visualized God's truth being present in my future life a lot. The things that he would teach me, I would visualize myself choosing that mental state that he had told me that I got to have. And like I said, maintenance. And so that's my answer to you. So in summary, I noticed, I knew that I was done working through it on a daily basis or regular basis when my symptom reduction was significant. And I think you'll know when you're ready to be done. And symptom relief is a part of this. And if your symptom goes up while you're doing this, all that just means is that you have a subconscious fear of experiencing whatever it is you're going towards. And so if that's your story, then it is okay to approach that from a really compassionate and kind way. And that means in the same way that we approach everything else in our lives that causes us physical pain, we want to use graded exposure, increase safety language, go to the Lord, and do it in a really gracious way towards ourselves, because that is the way that the Lord treats us. And so, okay. That's all I have for today. I hope that's helpful for those of you who are already on your journey, and I will see you guys again in a couple weeks. Bye.